Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I think what we always believe in is really starting, and somehow this movement just catches a wave and it just grows. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. And today we also have an honor of being joined by Dr. Pauline, who is the chairperson of the G100 mission for positive masculinity. And positive masculinity is really the things that we all subscribe to. And G100 is also in line with She Unleashed. You know, She Unleashed, Simpumi is the best
Your
friend of
initially. Mm-hmm.
biggest fan of She Unleashed. And behind it really is really driving us finding our space as women. You know, how do we coexist in a male world, and how do we find a way of communicating in a way that we jointly can have custody of building the nations and the different nations, because we are in different stages of our lives. I think wisdom in our stage lets us know that we need both genders. I mean, we've gone through the phases of saying, I'll do it alone, and we don't need men, and all of those extremes. But here is really where we're trying to carve out what can work for all of us, because there's a reason and there is a purpose behind both genders. How do we find a way of coexisting? So maybe just in ways of introduction, I would like to hand over to Dr. Pauline to just give us a little bit of a view as the chairperson of G100, what she has in mind. Dr. Pauline, today I'm joined by one of my best friends, Sis Mpumi, who's also a very advocate for women and women taking charge and doing things. Vuyo is the daughter, and the intention behind Vuyo was also to bring a younger voice, a different generation that will come and tell us, how do you perceive the world, what? So we are handing over the world to you. How are you perceiving what you are taking from us as women? Because we think we've worked. So what you're receiving, are you feeling that we have worked? And how do we take it forward? So let me hand over to you, Dr. Pauline, to do the introductions and just your purpose behind the work that you do with, your work that you're doing on your own, but also with the G100 mission. Over to you, Dr. Pauline.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's an absolute privilege and pleasure to be here. The whole movement within G100 across the world is a movement towards gender equality and harmony and a joint custody world. As in my view, I want to push us forward to that idea of authentic harmony and the idea that, as you said rightly, men and women coming together, we need all voices, but maybe we need them in a narrative that is different to the past. And that's my proposition. When I was approached to lead this chair, the G100 Global Chair for Positive Masculinity, I immediately said yes, with actually not knowing really what it was about. But I did think, having a lot of masculine energy in my own persona, I thought, this is fascinating. Maybe this is where we invite men to be different. And in fact, there's a movement behind the positive masculinity heading, which is led by 6 presidents in Africa. And this is where the fascination is, that these men are standing up and saying, we realize there's something going wrong in the world and we need to sort it out. Now, we obviously need to help them. That's my view. And I think all of us will be the same. It's not a man's issue, but it's not a woman's issue either. It's an us together issue. So when we see the output in violence or disruption, discrimination, harassment, that needs to go. And we do need men to be standing on the platform to be there with us. What we are looking at is, how do we create a much fuller awareness of why the issues are there and what we can do to go around them, go beyond them, go into another arena. So the idea of positive masculinity is not just about men, but for me, it's about how do women empower men to empower women to empower women. It's a circle. And in fact, if we just take the word women empowerment with a T on the end and we take the T off, we get women empower men. And I think if we open our hearts to embrace men, but with our own women-centric narrative, and we say there's a new landscape on which we can be authentically harmonious together, and it's an advantage. So it's my experience, and I'd love to know all of you, my experience of men is they want to know what's in it for me. Now, we might say women want to know what's in it for me, but men have been in a way, on the back foot with regards to equality. And I want to move the idea that we go beyond equality. So we actually almost say goodbye to equality as such, and we say hello to harmony. And where do we establish the equality within harmony? So if you take the example of an orchestra playing a piece of music, we need all the parts. We need the violins and the percussion and the drummers and we have the conductor at the front. And I want to get us into that place where, with a positive attitude towards masculinity and femininity, we explore what you said, Formula, about a joint custody world. So I'd love to know your views on that and how we can, in a way, be good about ourselves as women and see ourselves as strategies to invite men to this new narrative. You're on mute, Boo.
That is very well said. Thank you so much, Dr. Pauline. I think you laid the foundation. And I think what is your favorite also, your favorite saying is also saying without judgment. We are all here without judgment. We are all here in the process of learning, and we are here to really hold each other's hand as we learn. Next, I'd like to bring on board Mpumi. Sis Mpumi is, of course, a mother, and she's been in the corporate environment. She's, had everything. She's borne the scars of corporate. Wow. And standing up for corporate as an advocate for women. And there is a role that she's taking on without pay, Dr. Pauline. She's mentoring a lot of us who are corporate women, and really corporate women with a balance, grooming us to be women of valor, not only in the corporate sector, but also in the home, in society, and also is very firmly entrenched in the culture, the traditions, and knowing who we are. So also has a lot of experience in the arts. Let me hand over to you, Mpumi, to introduce yourself. Mbooms? I think we're struggling with her connectivity. She will come back. She'll come back. I think she's struggling a little bit with the connectivity. She'll come back. And next we're joined by Vuyo Kobokwane, and she's joined by a younger voice, Dr. Pauline, because we wanted to have the different voices. We've heard our voices, and we also would want to know and be conscious of what we're leaving behind. So we're joined by a very precious voice that's very vocal about culture, very vocal, and has a keen interest on arts and what we're leaving behind, the legacy. And she has such an interest and passion about the richness of our culture and what we're leaving behind, and just giving a voice to the Black female and the young female, and just, giving a sense of identity as well. Vuyo, please do introduce our guest of honor tonight, who was representing the younger voice. You're on mute, Vuyo.
I'm going to, in fact, let her introduce herself. She's more than capable of doing that. This is Obi Morse. Obi?
Hi, everyone. It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Obi. That is a nickname that you guys can call me if you want to, but Obi stands for Udirilunke. I was named by my mom. Shout out to her. I'm 21. I'm Gen Z, like you said, and you're very correct. I'm very passionate about film and representation, and basically South Africa being represented on film and just worldwide, because I just truly believe as a nation that we're such a rich people and we have so many narratives to tell. And because of our very intense history of like hiding stories, we're a little bit behind in sharing what has been hidden away. And because of our very quick-paced modernization from that dark period, from apartheid, we still even have a lot of more stories to catch up now, what it means to be a modern South African. And I'm just very passionate about our history, our future, and just like showing everyone around the world that like we are like the best, like we are like the country of gold, our people of gold, and our stories matter. We are here. You should see us.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And Vuyo, it must just be such a marvel to be bringing up and nurturing such a big soul. You know, she's such a big spirit. She just shows through. Must be so interesting to be watching her grow. Thank you
It
so much for
really
that.
It really, really is. I see Umama's back. Do
Yes.
you want to circle back to her or should I go on?
Go, Vuyo, and then we'll circle back to Mpumi.
Okay. Thanks, Pumza. Hi, Dr. Pauline. It's lovely to meet you. It's so interesting, these intergenerational discussions, and some of them can actually provoke and make us think differently, because I'm my mother's child. She too is her own mother's child, and there are ways in which she has raised us, and then for us raising Abo Obi and Gili and all the other teenage kids in the house, we learn something new every day, and we're challenged anew and afresh all the time. So that interconnection between our history, present, what they're experiencing as their present, and what they think of our history and where their future lies. I mean, the collision of those perspectives is always just food for thought. So it's great to be here.
Thank you so much, Vuyo. Mpumi is back. Mpumi, and this is the real anchor of everyone else. So she's the anchor to Vuyo. She's the stolen mother for me, because she is just there as the maternal figure in my life, who is just that consistent kind of pillar. Mpumi, let's hand over to you to introduce yourself. You're on mute, Mpumi. Unmute Mpumi.
Yeah, I had to reconnect,
Okay. Yeah.
I had to start from scratch, yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, me and technology are not the greatest of friends. I like to sit and talk to people and look at them and see them. Since when? Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? Anyway, thank you for this, right? Pumza and I are always talking about stuff generally, and after an hour or so, we wish we had recorded most of the things, because most of the things I say from wisdom of having been around this long, and I thank God for that. The 3 generations, is it 3, right?
Yes.
My children and I always have these kinds of talks about life, about us, about how things are done, about how things have been done. And I always remember my own mother and the way she used to do things that honestly I would love to correct. And I think I did at that time. The way the women related to men then. And starting with her, my mother. As this married woman, she is my father's wife, but she bows down to him fully. And you want to correct some of these things, but please speak up. Don't allow everything. You understand? Don't just be a yes person. do your bit, show your rights, show them and claim them. For example, a laughing example is that my father used to draw the list for groceries himself. He used to do it himself. Or if my mother does it, he takes the ball pen, he scratches some of the things off that probably he thinks it's a waste of money, I suppose. So come supper time or whatever time, there isn't much to produce or present, right? And I say to Mama, these things stay at the shop. If you don't buy them there, they're not going to be in the house. And it's a message that I wanted her to get across to my father, that if you don't buy stuff, I'm not able to cook it. But times change, right? Times evolve. During my generation now, things were completely different. We really did not have careers to pursue. We wanted to be housewives and our mothers. But that time also evolved very, very quickly. We became independent. We became women who drive cars, who take ourselves to work, who bring in salaries. That's a big change. It's a huge change for men. But remember, nobody is prepared for this, especially our men. So as time went on, we kept on leaving them behind. And with this generation, your generation, you find yourselves being on a competing stage. The men are not ready for that as well. But what has been happening also is that women and girls have been groomed fast and strong to be powerful and independent women. And we left the men behind. That's one mistake. That's why now we find ourselves in this big drive to make men understand that we can work together.
Yeah.
You can be a man, you can be a woman, but we have masculinity just as men have femininity in them. So we put ourselves on different pedestals and we become enemies. We fight. And we do find that men fight stronger and better than us. Because men unite, they do unite on an issue. We don't. And we've been talking about this for a long time. Women do not unite. And now how we are trying to rectify this is by having these little discussions on our own as women. And you find that we even lose what we are meeting about, what we are talking about, and other things come to the fore, right? You know, women like being pretty and nicely dressed, and we do that. And it becomes the thing. The focus on what do we do to be on a par with men. We go to university, to the same universities, we study the same courses, we qualify, right? We gain the same experiences, but we are different because we are men and women. When you get this position to lead, a man knows what to do with that position.
Absolutely.
When a woman gets this opportunity to lead, we start by being sorry and wanting to apologize for every move that we make. And then that brings us to loyalty, the kind of loyalty that we see as loyalty.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it isn't. It isn't loyalty because it lacks a number of things that make what loyalty actually is. Loyalty as, yes, sorry.
And you're touching to the core of our discussion today, Mpumi. I loved how you circle back to just how
to that.
Yeah, how it
Yes.
is such a weakness on our part in terms of growing and how do we unite? Because loyalty is that glue that holds us together.
It is that glue. And this loyalty now we need to learn not to put it into compartments of whether this leader is a man or a woman. It is a leader. And nobody must ask you if you tend to side with a woman, for example. Whose loyalties do you have? Whose side are you? It must never be about sides. Do you understand? It must be a genuine loyalty.
Yeah, we agree on a principle.
With no frills. And this loyalty must be able to say, you are wrong here. This is not how it's done. Whether it's the leader is a woman or a man, the facts must be faced.
Umi, you are getting to the essence of the discussion, because now my question is, because we as women are so multi-layered, we are so multifaceted, and there are so many factors that contribute to who we are.
Yes.
And also the fact that we've layered this in as an intergenerational discussion is because we view the same word loyalty differently. And I think it's the essence of today, that what does loyalty mean to you, Obi? What does it mean to Vuyo's generation? And what does it mean to Mpumi's generation? Because that's the main differentiator. Because if we agree on the definition, in the first place, because maybe we don't even agree on the definition, because we are brought in this different eras, right? For instance, my era, and it may be different to Vuyo because it's different backgrounds, it's different, it's different era. I grew up with a divorced mom, and she had to look after a family. She found herself all of a sudden, she's divorced, she has a title, divorced, she has this family. And back in the days, she had to go back home. She has an extended family where she has to be the caretaker of the family. And in that context, she had to learn, I have no one else but myself. So when it comes to loyalty is to myself first, and everyone else follows, right? And we learn this in different ways. So Pumza, as a toddler who's watching her mom, struggling to raise a family, you can see the dynamics. You're young, you're 5, you can make up here and there. And you see how your mom is really struggling to make ends meet. And that, okay, outside of us, there's no one. So you have to make it happen. So Pumza makes what? A decision in her head that I have to make it happen. And I am loyal to no one else but to me and my immediate family. So, and it would be interesting to know, in your era, Dr. Pauline, what was loyalty? What did you define as loyalty?
I was very blessed to be brought up in a very loyal family, a very loving father and mother, where there were some of the things you referred to, where the man does this, the woman does that. My mother didn't work. She brought us up. She was what I would call a community entrepreneur. She was always doing something in the community. But my father was the one who went out to work and came back. But they brought us up with discipline and responsibility and love and faith. And that's where I learned loyalty. But I think it's interesting because talking to people recently about loyalty, it seems to be very random now. And I really concur with the idea that women are not loyal with each other. I mean, might be loyal to a cause, but then if the cause becomes an argument with somebody else, is that really valuable? So I love the idea of also poems are about being loyal to yourself, because there's a lot of things to me about trust and transparency and respect coming into loyalty. So I was also questioning the idea of what was disloyal. So when somebody is disloyal to you, you feel very, very shattered. It gets you right inside. But I don't know whether men feel that same way. They can be loyal to a football club. Is that the same as loyalty to a cause? It's an affiliation to something. And if we have a loyalty to, for instance, men and women actually being in harmony as opposed to fighting for something, then that's where I want to place my attention. But I'm really, really fascinated to know what our younger generation is going to think. And one thing I like to just add is having a wisdom waterfall. So with our different generations, can we actually be sure that the wisdom flows down, but that actually we listen to your wisdom and we take it into the flow of the future because it's yours.
Absolutely. So I think what you've raised is also very important, because despite being loyal to self, there was also an ecosystem, because we also come from a cultural background as Black people. So the funniest thing is it's always multi-layered. Loyal to family, immediate family, but we grow up in a system where, we said it takes a village to raise a child. So she was not alone. She had a body of women who always supported each other, whether it's within the community context or from a religious context, the faith people who believed. And it took all of those systems together. And somehow in their era, I'm struggling to find Vuyo. What was the meaning of, the Thursdays that our moms subscribed to, the Mañano, we call it Mañano because it was like women convening on Thursdays to fill each other up from a faith perspective. And you would see a different person coming back home because they've just come back from Mañana. There was that religious connotation to it. Vuyo, what did it mean to you?
Look, so my mother was a modern working mother, right? So my experience, or our experience of her, was, well, you have to get up and go do it yourself. You've got to work hard. Everything is within reach. You have access. And as I recall, my father himself was a modern husband, because I don't ever recall a conversation about what my mom could or could not do. And there never was a job for only my brother and my male cousins and one for us as the girls. All of us were taught to cook. Everybody's got their chores. Every Saturday, everybody's got their chores. If my brother must make the dog food and wash the dog and then come and make the porridge because we can't make the porridge, that's what his job is, right? So we grew up in that kind of household, all right? So I didn't know any different. But of course, I do have in my own circle of friends, mothers like what you've described, Pumza, of a mother who goes to refill her cup, within that society or mañano, and really truly come back almost a transformed woman, because we would know Mama Kabanbani next door, who, when they've come back, and we know her to be strict, we know her to be like a no-nonsense mother, but there was always this sort of thing that when she comes from there, she'll come back with a bucket of scones or something nice. And she feels and sounds and looks different. And I think, to your point, it's going to fetch something from a different source, because here in the household, you have so much responsibility. And back then, the responsibility was hers and hers alone, primarily. So how we are trying to raise our children is also in that vein, because that's what we were taught by Umama, is, of course, you're capable. There's no job for, my son and then Obi, and then everybody's job. It's everybody's responsibility, to the extent that Lazi himself can cook, Obi can, do what her dish is. All of us must just work and make the household work. So equally very vocal about what she sees in school, in her community of young people, but in high school, they would always come back to say, can you believe the privilege that boys seem to have over us? And I'd say, oh my God, I can't believe this is still happening. And so the stories that she can give you an example herself of how this really just used to scar them. And so allowing them to come back and vocalize so we can debate it, so they don't go back out into the world thinking that is in fact a reality. Wanted them to know that it is not a reality. You can fight back, and you must in fact do so, and be vocal about your own stance. Obi.
Wow, you guys had a lot of points. So my train of thoughts is kind of like trickled down. It'll come back to our main topic, but I wanted to start with what Makulu and Dr. Crawford were talking about, men and empowerment with women. When I think of patriarchy, I think that patriarchy really is a thief of harmony, like you said. When you think of an orchestra and stuff like that, it's like me playing a piano and a man playing the violin, but they took half the keys off my piano and then cut the strings of his violin. Like when you think of masculinity and you think of femininity, when you think of girls, you think that we are not allowed to be strong. We've been like, in the sense that patriarchy conditions women, we are not allowed to be strong. We are not allowed to be independent. You're to be polite. You're to be seen, not heard. But for men, what makes them not see that patriarchy kills them too is that men are not allowed to be emotional without it being seen as it blocks them. That's what makes them unconnectable to us, is that they are told that they are not allowed to be vulnerable. They are not allowed to be emotional. They're not allowed to be nurturing. They are not allowed to be intimate without some form of gratitude or reward at the end. And when I think of patriarchy, I think that it's robbed us, both men and women, a lot.
Oh, wow.
And then when I think of women, and I think of my upbringing, I also came from very modern parents. I came from a revolutionist father. He was an apartheid activist and was very adamant that I would be brought up as someone who was not afraid to be where I am. And he was very strategic about when he was going to have kids, because he did not want me to be afraid of who I was. He wanted me to be a free person. But the thing is, my mom, she wasn't like a revolutionist. She was a very hippy dippy woman. But when it came to it, she sat down with me and she said, I understand your father has raised you very well, but there's something that your father does not see. There's a lens. There's something in his eyes that he does not pick up the way you are going to pick up later on in life, right? You are a girl who will become a woman, and the world will see you as such, right? As both Black and woman. And she told me about how politeness for women and girls can be very poisonous. The attitude that women have grown up in this patriarchy of being very quiet with everything, that even if I was not raised in my household to be quiet, that as soon as I go to school, that politeness that's enforced on me comes up very quickly. That question of what will people say, or how will other people react, is very adamant. And the thing with patriarchy is that it robs a lot from women because of all of this talk and stuff like that. It robs us that loyalty from each other, because when you talk about men and women competing, it's because men are competing with other men. Women are competing with men and women. When it comes to loyalty with women, what I've seen being passed down from generations is that you have to be loyal to yourself, number one, which is something I believe in. But with my generation, we take girlhood and womanhood into account with loyalty. There's this phrase that modern girls like to say that, oh, I'm a girl's girl, meaning that I am for girls, I am with girls. My main product in life, when I socialize, I look out for girls, I see girls. And with patriarchy robbing us this foundation early on in life, it was hard for girls to feel like they can be loyal to each other, because society is telling us, why should you be? Like, why should I be loyal to this girl because she's prettier than me? Actually, she could like take away something from me. I cannot be loyal to her. It will detriment me. Why should I be loyal to this girl? She's smarter than me. She thinks I'm a bozo or whatever. Why should I be loyal to this girl? She's more virtuous than me. Society finds her more. Why should I be more loyal to this girl because she's promiscuous or whatever? There's so many things that women are told what to do and what not to do. And that politeness, again, tells us to keep quiet. So we can't even interact with each other and say, hey, this contradicts itself. Wait, what? It's this thing that kills us. And when I think of loyalty, right, back to loyalty, like the other Black women here, I have two definitions of loyalty from where I've come from the cultural sense of like, it takes a village. You are only as strong as the weakest member of your village, so you have to come together. And loyalty being such a very human thing, man or women, in the evolutionary sense that you need to be loyal. We have each other, right? It's us versus predators. So we need to be loyal to each other to survive, right? And then you think of it on like a societal level, like we need to be loyal to each other because I'm your family, right? When I was a child, loyalty to me came immediately because I'm loyal to my dad. He buys me chips, he takes me to school, he baths me, he reads me. Why shouldn't I be loyal to this person, right? And when I think another form of loyalty, which is so precious to me when I think about girlhood and womanhood, when I grow into womanhood, is loyalty is choice. When I find loyalty in friendships, it's such a fascinating phenomenon that loyalty can be a choice, because outside of my village, right, we're not related to each other at all, Pumza. I can say I'm loyal to Pumza because she's intelligent, she's kind, she's nurturing, she is empowering to me, and I choose to be loyal to Pumza. Pumza is my friend. Pumza is loyal to me too. This is not one-sided loyalty. Me and Pumza choose to be loyal to each other. So that's where I see loyalty as this two-faceted definition. Like loyalty doesn't come as like a singular definition for me or my generation.
Wow, that is so powerful, Obi. And I think you raise very valid points, because I think if you contrast Bomi's talk and what you are saying, it just talks to the different layers and how we approach loyalty. Because if you take my context as well, loyalty was by blood, right? Blood. You can have the dysfunctional ones in the family, but you are loyal to them.
Yes.
Part of the family.
Mm.
And loyalty was
And
by
mad ones.
culture. You know, you belong to the same clanhood.
Yeah.
You therefore feel the obligation to be loyal to that church, society, all of those things. And I love what you said, that we renegotiate this. We have to talk as girls, because we've moved away from the being blindsided by the fact that we have to be nice girls, we have to keep quiet. So we question things, you know, and we ask ourselves, because for us, there was a bit of blindedness, Mpumi, because it was, we knew there was the dysfunctional Malume, but Malume had to be there. Whether we liked it or not, he was blood. And it was different things, you know. And I think it's things that children watch and they observe and they're like, but how is this guy that we're talking about yesterday so bad about? And part of it. So Mpumi, let me hand over to you. What do you observe in this conversation, and what for you is different about what we're saying in contrast to your era?
So much has been said, right? But the interesting thing is that whatever I learned then, whatever was genuine or the thing then, still stands. We were so aware of patriarchy, right? And we were probably helpless around it. And it continued to strengthen. Now, in this era, your OB, no Vuyo, Nani, it is with that understanding that patriarchy has actually crippled us. It has taken a lot out of us. And it is going to take probably another 150 years to rectify all of that. And I think what Dr. Pauline is doing now is to reawaken this understanding that, look, as much as we are different in terms of masculinity and femininity, we need a bit of each other to make all of this work. We need that unification of these strengths and weaknesses. And in fact, we're not throwing away anything, but we are balancing these things consciously too. We do know that women are physically weaker than men, but the brains are the same. We can use our brains equally as we do all other things in life that we do. We just need that continuous understanding of our differences, but working towards the same goal.
Absolutely.
And the wisdom then is that you observe sometimes the fights, the fighting patriarchy also needs to have ears and eyes, because patriarchy is not going to go away. It is there. It is a part of who we are. In fact, you will hear other women saying, you can't talk like that to a man. You know, it is those things that you decide whether to unlearn or redefine, for example. But honestly, you can't talk like anyhow to anybody, to be honest. Respect applies to everybody, right? If a woman cannot talk this way to a man cannot talk that way to a woman. That equals respect each other, both ways. There is a particular way of talking to the other person, not because he's a man or a woman. Those observations do not go away. And there's a problem as we move on with time. There's a problem of sophistication, and incomplete sophistication is very dangerous, because people who purport to be sophisticated without actually being sophisticated miss out on a number of things. Like, we've got traditions, for example. Our own traditions and cultures stand. If you are, as another example, you are at your in-laws' place, you know from the rules of patriarchy, though, that you can't wear short pants here or tight pants or those kinds of things. You need to cover up. And women must not fight that because you have a doctorate, you are an executive or a chairman of the board or whatever. If you go to your in-laws, you know immediately how to dress, how to cover up. And then it is those little instances, they're not painful, but they need observation from you as the wife of this family. It is those things go together with you being the chairman of, for example, of a company, as educated and as intelligent as you are. You know, though, you cannot go into a boardroom wearing a very short dress and showing your cleavage. And you say, we work together as with masculinity and femininity. We need to respect those aspects of our lives.
Very interesting perspectives there, Mpumi. So it just means that this positive masculinity is a negotiation, right? It doesn't mean that we go in an extreme, we go and we say we're feminists now, we can wear what we want. There has to be a bit of responsibility with what we want to communicate to the world. And I think you've raised a couple of points. We are different, we are equal, but we are different. And I think that's what Dr. Pauline always says, that we are equal, but we're different in our equalness. Yeah. Dr. Pauline, what are your observations? This is your first time listening to a context in South Africa.
I love this conversation. I love the line, I'm unique, just like everybody else, because we are equal and different. And that's what my study is when I look at the different men and women who come to the table. And it goes back to this idea of sharing wisdom without judgment. You know, when we have no judgment. So the 3 rules for me are no judgment, no anger, and no coercion. And what I mean by that is, in a time period where you set the conversation to be exploring things that we maybe never reflected on before, and every single word that we've used today is different. So the idea that men are physically stronger than women, I would agree, but women are incredibly strong, and men would never be able to have babies. They just wouldn't put up with the pain. So, it's exploring, what does the word strong mean? And like going back to the word loyalty, I reflected on something in my own life, is that I was brought up in a very Catholic family, and I decided to get divorced, and I felt very disloyal to my parents, not to the religion, interesting enough, but to my parents. And I was scared to talk to them, but I knew that I had to leave my husband. And I was really, really impressed with my mother, who saw me as a woman. Although she was a converted Catholic and very, very, very strong, she said, I see you're not happy, and I see you as a woman. And it was bounded in the fact that we had a relationship beyond my choice. And maybe that's what we need to do. If we fight the whole time, fighting is not a natural pursuit of women. To be strong doesn't mean we have to fight, in my view. And I think if we really stand strong for who we are and the woman-centric journey, which, as we've all said, is different. We are women, we're girls. We're girly girls, or we're whatever girls we are. We're sensitive women, we're tough women, we're respectful women, but we are women. And women at the core are relational based, we're nurturers. I've done lots of exercises where I've asked men and women to talk about women. You'll always find the word nurture comes up. If you ask the same question about men, and you ask men about men, women about men, that word doesn't come up. It's a big divider. We are the nurturers, we're Mother Earth, we're whether we actually become mothers or not, we have that nurturing need. And I love the point. I wanted to pick up on the point of politeness. Being British and being brought up in a very polite society, I would love the word politeness to have a much better version than you talked about, which is so important. And it is interesting, our general tendency for women to say, oh, I'm sorry about that. And maybe we don't actually mean, oh my God, I'm sorry. But I hear myself saying it, and I think, oh, I'm going to change that habit. So some of it is changing some of our habits. I want women to be really strong and assertive and voiced, but I don't want them to be aggressive and fighting, because I think then we lose the plot. And in my experience, men want to come into our land of hope and trust and respect, but they have a different perspective. And if we respect that and invite them in, I believe that we can shift this faster than 150 years, because I won't be around, so I want it to happen faster. And in your lifetime, I have a granddaughter who's 13, and she's 5'9". She's much taller than me, and she's much bolder and braver than me. And I think, well, there are so many young people who have the courage that also you shared with us, which I really appreciate. And for us women of mature years to listen to our young people is so important, without judgment. And when somebody says something that you go, don't know that I like that, then I invite my clients to say, that's an interesting perspective. Because when you say that, you applaud the other person, even though you might not agree with them, but you leave them in a state of healthy anticipation. So I think the whole idea of having more and more conversations where we listen and don't judge and contribute.
Absolutely, Dr. Pauline. And I think it just weaves into the next question. And the next question for me is, I marvel at the different generations and how they display loyalty, because I'm in a generation where I think loyalty is very fickle. And I think we can have different perspectives as people. And yet it's this very essence that we need for thriving in corporate environments, in boardrooms, and so on. But I think we are functioning in an environment where we become so offended, we are offended by anything. And in our being offended, because we also have overplayed the whole notion of independence. We've become even independent amongst each other. we've forgotten that we also need us as a chain of women to an extent that, you find yourself fighting alone. Meanwhile, there are things that I reflect in the different generations. When I look at my mother, when I look at Sisipumi's generation, and I reflected, these women, no matter what the differences were, the children never knew. We would never know about their differences. And they would be there at such pivotal moments of their lives. It didn't matter if they didn't see each other for 20 years, but one would come when they hear there's a funeral of a mother, there is this big transition that is taking place. And there's a bit of isolation in our generation because we've become so independent and we think that we can buy things with money. We can buy into the next level, the next society. We don't need anyone. And that has become so toxic and transferred to even relations that are so pivotal to each other. So my question to everyone is, what about the future? What in the previous generation do you appreciate about loyalty, and what do you think can be brought into this generation as a strength in loyalty? Maybe let me start with you, Sisimpumi.
Yeah, Pumza, I think the ability to say to this person that you are so loyal when they probably go astray or misstep or make a mistake, because we're human, we do make mistakes, right? It is this ability to be able to say you're going off the line, and you do this with a lot of consideration without hurting the person, and not just be blindly loyal to a person because this is so and so you are dealing with. You actually need to, in fact, it's honesty. What I'm driving at is honesty. To support one with dishonesty is the gravest mistake of this time, because the tendency is to iconize each other. And it is as if you point out something that's not becoming with the one person, you either lose the friendship or you lose something. And I don't know what it is that people are scared of losing, because as much as you say loyalty to yourself first, but when it comes to these relationships of that you build as you in your careers in particular, you don't want to point out the wrong in the person that you iconize so much. It is not only destructive to that person, but it is destructive to all of you and the whole world, in fact, because what kind of leaders are you then developing? Leaders are human beings. They make mistakes. They can't get it right all the time. But those people who are these your loyal people surrounding the person must be able to point out the flaws if there are any, just as much as you praise when there's a need for praise. It is that balance that is lacking this time, and it causes a lot of toxicity, actually, in friendship and in the workplace, even in church. It does this, in fact, in this political sphere also as well. And in there, it brings about factionalism. You find that people take sides without even thinking whether this person is right or wrong or what it is about, actually. There's no ideology to think about these days. As long as you say, and there's this word that I hate so much, I support so-and-so. Support this person from doing what? You understand? If you are misleading the person by letting them believe that they are right until actually they break your heart, and then you decide to drop them. And it is not pleasant. We know it. That's what factionalism does. It is a misinterpretation of loyalty. And we are at that stage as a country it's going to take a lot of work to reverse that. For people to be bold and open and say, I don't think we should have done this way.
Yes.
And a true leader will accept that, with dignity, actually. That's my view.
And that is spoken from one of my greatest fans and also loyal friends who will tell me that, hey, Sissy, you must at least try to put on the lipstick.
Doing this video, 100%. Both you and Umama Pumza, literally took the words out of my mouth, because I've been thinking about this question since you spoke about this session, that we often, at least observing Mama's generation, that loyalty there was actually prized. So whether it's being loyal to, taking a secret to the grave, that's what those women did. They showed up for one another. Sorry, Dr. Pauline, as in you cover everything in all its ugliness and make it look, if not pretty, then at least neutral. No one will be none the wiser, because these women have it. They've got you covered. It doesn't matter the disrepute that perhaps an errant husband has brought upon the family, but no one would know. No one who didn't have to know would know.
Yes.
That's the kind of loyalty I've observed from that generation, and sometimes to a fault, right? To the detriment of perhaps those very people that they were trying to defend. In our generation, to your point again, Pumza, what I know and have seen is the sadness of this fickle brand of loyalty, where I'm loyal to you as long as you are in this circle, as long as I go with you to these kinds of places. And the day that ends, that access to those resources ends, is the day I find a new friend. I have a new best friend and a new person that I'm posting on social media. And of course, social media is so destructive and can be weaponized in that way, that I can be singing your praises today, but tomorrow, if anything befalls you, ruins your reputation or taints your reputation, then I'm not your friend. I don't even know you. So that's the brand of loyalty that I see in our generation, for the most part, obviously not tainting everyone with the same brush. But for me, loyalty is also about that person who speaks for you and defends your honor in your absence. In particular, they'll do so when you are there, but more so when you're not. Who speak for you, not about you. And when you hear somebody via that network that, oh, Upumza said this about you, and I'm so pleased to meet you, and that's, for me, is the goosebump stuff. That's the authenticity of loyalty. Is I've got your back. I don't have your back blindly, because for me, again, that's disloyalty. If I can't call you out on something that I know in your sober mind you probably wouldn't do. My loyalty, my brand of loyalty, is standing up for you, challenging you, because that's being good to you. That's me being true to you. That's me being genuinely interested in your wellness and your well-being and your welfare, because the world out there will shred you to pieces. Somebody has got to, when I've got your back, I want to be the first one to tell you and say to you, I'm calling you out on this value, on this principle. And I think when we spoke yesterday, I was saying your principles get tested in the moment, when now you must use that tool to stand up for something you believe in. Wow. And when that is something transient, it's just for show then, there's no substance to it. So for me, my brand of loyalty is really just, I've got your hand, I'm going to hold you, I will speak for you, I will defend your honor and your dignity, but I will call you out, because for me, that's authentic, that's real love.
Wow. That is so powerful.
Yeah. Sorry, Pumza, go ahead.
No. I was just commenting on the statement that you just made. That is so powerful, and the true essence, really. And you wonder, where's this in corporate? Because this is exactly, the boys will talk for each other.
Yeah.
Where's this? When we need it the most. Yes, Obi, let's go to you.
What I was thinking about the older generation and its definition, especially women, it kind of, as a younger woman who looks back, it really devastates me how screwed the vision of loyalty was back in the day for my Mokulu and my grandmother, because loyalty is to shake hands with someone. If I'm the only one with my hand up, right, and we're not having a conversation, I'm talking at you. You are listening to me. I'm waving at you. We are meant to be loyal. Loyalty is a two-way street. If you are doing everything and anything for me, you worship me. You're not loyal to me. And it devastates me how many women have broken their bones and spirits worshiping this man in this husband in this relationship to save an image of a family, to save the image of the man, and they die, right? They die as disciples. They die as disciples, not wives. That's the thing that makes me very sad about how loyalty was seen back then, because to me, loyalty, as I say, is a two-way street. And I'm sure as when you become a mom, you see that. And that's what my mom was also concerned to me when I was making friends for the first time, because you don't want your kid to be worshiping another child. It becomes torturous to see, and it's torturous to feel. It's crazy. If I was loyal to my stepmom, I'm doing everything for her, I'm making sure she's doing everything, and then she doesn't do anything for me. That's not loyalty. I'm her disciple and she's my God. And that's not what loyalty is. To be loyal is to be human. To worship is to be a disciple, and there's a God, and there's no God between two people. We are two humans, and you should treat loyalty as such, as humanity. It's crazy. It makes me very sad when I think about it. And when I think of loyalty, how it's been translated in the younger generation, because of the country I grew up in, being a young woman has been quite difficult. It's been very, I have to be very vigilant as a person. But because of my access to the internet and communication and community, feminism and radical feminism and the way women interact with each other has become different. I brought up this phrase, a girl's girl, is what a lot of us younger girls like to refer us to as we support and we protect women. So when I'm out in the streets, right, my loyalty, when I go out or something and it's nighttime, my loyalty is to my friends, to keep my friends safe. But my loyalty is that if I see Pumza, she's by herself sitting at a table, her friends haven't arrived yet, it's a mostly male-centered area, me and my friends have a loyalty to you as another woman there. We're going to be like, oh, hey girl, how are you? Are your friends coming yet? Do you want us to sit with you whilst you wait? Because it just, as a woman in this country, when your own government isn't doing the things it needs to do to protect you, we need to come together and protect each other. That's what loyalty among strangers, even it doesn't even feel like strangers when the country that we grow up in.
Obi, I think you're bringing a very good perspective, which is the question of when does loyalty become toxic? Because we can be, and I think we have a diversity of experiences that were modeled by the loyalty. So out of grandma's loyalty modeling, there were good homes that were built. There were children that were protected from, many things. And eventually, I think what would be at fault with modeling is to see that the world is a perfect place. It's not a perfect place. And sometimes there are stages where we all go through challenges that we need to cover ourselves in, because sometimes people meet you at your worst and they think that's you. It actually is not. It actually helps to have friends, who come and cover you at those moments. And I think so it becomes very much important that as we talk to you guys, I think opening even these channels of saying, guys, it's not one size fits all, that when you're loyal to this man, it's because you're loyal to a horrible specimen or whatever. And I think those are the conversations that we need to have, and also not to cover the wrong ones and be truthful about the wrong ones. When does this loyalty become toxic? Because you also have brothers, you also have cousins, and in this complexity of girls for each other, one day someone is extra vigilant against your cousin that that this guy is coming from a good home. So when do we cut that fine balance of saying, not every man is an enemy?
No. I was going to suggest that we could be loyal to truth, but the truth is also personal. And again, it's about listening to other people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer the whole thing about toxicity, somebody asked me, what's toxic behavior?
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, it's anything that damages another person. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously at the pernicious end, it's rape, it's physical.
Mm-hmm.
But at the other end, it's just it's that critical word, it's that put down, it's anything that upsets the balance in your own body.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's about managing it. So somebody is damaging another person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you assess the energy? It might be a point of questioning. Does that feel damaging? It's not an accusation about the person who's said something, because when you look at men and women, sometimes men are very blunt. For instance, they don't like chatter. They may be abrupt. Oh, no, that's not relevant. And a woman might take offense, but that may not necessarily be a deliberate toxic behavior. So we got to be self-evaluating and understanding what is hurting us and what we won't put up with. Yep. And then being honest about it, like, actually, I don't like the way you're talking to me and I'm not putting up with it. We either resolve this now or I'll leave. Yeah, we all choices. But I think the one thing I put is, how do we get to an unconditional world when in fact we're placing conditions on everything? And that's the challenge. I mean, I'm in my 70s, I'm British, I'm white, I've had experiences, I've got 2 children, 2 grandchildren. Everybody's got a whole set of experiences in there, what they bring. But I always aim to be honest and tell my truth, which might not be the same as your truth. And this is where, going back to the loyalty or disloyalty between women, I do feel that until we really bond as sisters in a way that evaluates our strength in the world, men will always look across the parapet and go, oh my God, don't understand them. I mean, men always say to me, we're really straight and simple. We don't understand women. They're very complex. Yeah. So we have to accept our complexity and kind of help men to understand it, but start with our own sisters and really understand it's okay to be different. We don't have to all be the same, but to look unconditionally at the values we share and the principles, for me, about harmony as opposed to fighting for something.
Fantastic. I see, Obi, your hand is up, and for you?
Sorry. I wanted to speak to your point as like loyalty and like the cousins and brothers we have, like they come from good homes, but there's still that vigilance as women as we have. I'm, as to say this very bluntly, as a young girl in South Africa, when I'm assessing my situation and this area that I'm in, I don't have the luxury to have a conversation with myself if any man around me came from a good home, because the reality is that my life could end in that second I think about it. And that is not to say that all men are inherently evil. I don't believe that either, right? But when I step outside, there is not if, but a when waiting for me, like when I get attacked and I don't have the time to assess men in that situation. And in that same vigilance for other women, if I would see Pumza sitting by herself and there's like a man like trailing behind her, but I haven't seen them spoke, my immediate thought is, does Pumza know this man? Why is this man in Pumza's bubble? I'm reading Pumza's facial expression. Is she uncomfortable? Is she interacting with this man? I'm gonna go over and check on Pumza. Hey girl, are you cool? Who's your friend? You don't know that guy? Oh, we're going anyways. Let's get you away from this guy. Because, and when I think of that, when men are like, kind of like in touch with their feelings about it, it's like, well, what are we supposed to think? We're like, I'm a nice guy, and it's stuff like that. And it makes me think that I don't think it's fair for women to, even in our own, when we're in danger, even in our own vigilance, even when we have to protect ourselves, we still have to accompany the feelings of men. I am going to, like, there's an option when I step outside, I am going to die. I'm so sorry I cannot take in your feelings into this moment. I'm so sorry. I'm sure that your mother raised a nice boy, but in the second, I don't know you, and I don't have the survival minutes to get to know whether you're going to kill me in the second or not. And I think the thing with this conversation with men and women, I find it's kind of infuriating for me when women are tasked with doing so much of the work when we're talking. Like, we as women have to educate men, we have to open ourselves to men, we have to empower men, make men feel empowered. And it's like, what stops men from educating themselves, from seeing in a different perspective and stuff like that? Because when I think about how I grew up, and I'm currently 21 years old, I've experienced things and I've talked about things from a very young age, like ridiculously. I'm sure I've been having this serious conversation since I was 12 years old, since I was 13 years old, right? And men are allowed to like live in this ignorant bubble until it's within close proximity to them. Like you said, like men only can see things when it's closer to them. Even when you bring up like rape in South Africa, you always have to put it in this very pillowed, like, what if it was your mom? What if it was your sister? What if it was your daughter? Why isn't it the statement is, women are being killed, women are human beings, you shouldn't, why is there huge rates of homicide against other people? Why does it have to be so connected to you? Because it's in the same with animal rights. I don't have to know that dog. I don't have to, that doesn't have to be my family dog for me to know somebody mustn't kick it. But why is it a woman, you have to be like, what if it was your sister for you to care about the cause? So when I think of vigilancy, I really do center myself and other women, and men are very much in the backseat for me when I think of vigilance, when I think of feminism, when I think of, but of course men are meant to be in the conversation of feminism. But I think that for the first time in history, women are standing alone with a mic. And when it comes to certain conversations like this, I don't think they need to share the mic and stuff like that. And I was even thinking to back when you guys were talking about saying sorry and stuff like that in conversation, when you say sorry and stuff like that, that's a very woman thing to do. Men don't do that. And when I was growing up, my mom used to tell me, she used to also hear that I was saying that, oh, I'm sorry, all the time. Because inherently as a woman, when you enter space, you should be sorry. You are taking up room. You are taking up room in some way. I emailed you like late at night, so sorry that I moved you out of the way. So sorry. I wore the round. Oh, sorry. Were you gonna wear that? It's like everything we do, we're taking up space. We're taking up breath. It's like as a woman, you're not allowed to do anything because you're robbing it of someone, of some man that you're taking a position from. You're wasting their time. You're doing something. And that's what I think about. And that's what frustrates me, because as a woman, every time, because we live in a patriarchy, you live with this tiny man inside of your head telling you like you're taking up space, you're setting a bad narrative for us when you talk about like your safety and stuff like that. So whenever I think of vigilance and I think of loyalty to my male counterpart, like my male family members and stuff like that, I do love them and I am loyal to them, but I cannot center them in issues that would consequence in me falling, because then that again becomes worship. It does not become loyalty.
Right. Bobby, I understand your context, especially and I think, Dr. Pauline, in many of our discussions, this was my biggest challenge of saying, how do we say harmony when every day we're met with statistics of who has been killed in South Africa, and we are meeting this aggression and also this resistance to changing, because people have the entitlement, have the, and I exactly understand where Obi is at, because it is the position that we've all been as women in our, in our growth, in a generation of growth. And I think this is where the importance of these conversations become so important, because we are allowing a percentage of men who have been specifically harmful to us to really define the society that we want to live in. Ideally, a society we want to live in, as I think in every girl's heart, is really a harmonious relationship, a harmonious family. But Obi is talking through trauma. We've seen too much. We've seen too much, and what she expresses is exactly the truth. And I love how, I believe, I'm a Christian, so I believe in God. And I always say, I love how funny God is, because the same extreme that was Obi is Pumza, who now has a son. And I know I'm bringing up my son differently, and I would fear for him to meet Obi, because Obi meets him with with that attitude. And I think this is why the call for all of us to really develop the harmony and say, probably the enemy is 20% of our society, but we've made it part of us. How do we find each other? How do we also develop men who are protectors? Because men are also scared of these guys. I always look and I try to get to the psyche of men, and the very men that unsettle us also unsettle other men, and men are scared to engage with them. So how do we find the harmony? Because I think the space for harmony and the space for harmony is really through engagement, or be just for your interest. Background saying to you, like, hey, I don't need this man, we can do it better. But we had an interesting conversation with men in the room, in a corporate environment, where we actually asked their insights. And it was so shocking to see men who are saying, look, we worry about our daughters. We worry about the world that they're coming into. We stand up and support women, but we also get a shock when these women say men are dogs, because we are here. And I mean, putting in the same context, you named your father, who was a strong father and supported you and whatever. Do we cluster him in the same kind of context when we say, when you have placards outside of court and say men are dogs? Is it all inclusive of everyone? Because really we have to sift at some point to say not every man is a dog, right? And I think that this is a very interesting talk. Let's bring it home to us. Let's bring it home to us within this gender called women, and the concern every year. Vuyo knows, every year we go for breakfast, for lunches, Women's Day and whatever, and we go back to the corporate environment, we go back to the schools, we go back to society, and sometimes we are worst enemies, and this very same loyalty is not there. And meanwhile, logically speaking, it doesn't make sense on paper.
No.
Women are the greatest consumers. Women build homes. Women are behind these men who are successful. Why are we not able to? What is this conversation about loyalty that needs to be heard that says, and I think it's to your point, Obi, maybe in a different context of pushing the cause of women, not only from a safety perspective, but also progression of the women agenda. How are we not able to advocate for a little bit more power, use the leverage of firstly, advocacy within each other, but also the allyship with men? I mean, we mentioned that there are men who are allies of women. Why has how have our conversations not become better over time, and we're still crying foul and crying this stats and so on? Dr. Pauline, maybe let me hear from you.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is that in our setting out a vision for authentic harmony, and the word authentic is really important and down out for a conversation, we also need to be accountable. And I think I'm very clear about this, is bringing those men and women who are behaving badly in the world, and sadly there are women in leadership roles who are not good, but really bringing those men to account as saying, we need to change things, but we'd like to change the ground plan too. Because that's the thing I think we're not doing. We keep on fighting for a place at the board, or put more women in here, put women there. And I don't know that it's a numbers game. I think it's a new plot. And that's where I think the younger generation are also in there. We've had this huge shift in the world through COVID, which has changed the way we're working. It's impacted even major organizations, but we're not changing the ground plan. We're still talking up here and not changing the ground plan and saying, right, half the world is women, half the world is men. Out of 3.9 billion women, 2.2 billion are mothers. That makes a difference. How do we factor in a new way of working that creates prosperity for everybody? Do we change the percentage rates? That, there's all sorts of things we can change, but we know that there are good men who are advocating for us, and we need to help them stand up against those who are not wanting change. So it is an iterative process, more and more of these conversations. And I do think it's good to have conversations with women, conversation with men, and then with men and women together. And that's my view, is using a new map and saying, okay, we factor in emotional integrity, we factor in all the what people call soft skills, which of course not soft, and we actually work on how do we deliver profit back to people as they become part of whatever the profit is. So it's not just profit motivated or social motivated. The one thing women are very good at is stranding everything together. The one thing men are not good at is stranding everything together. So it's understanding complexity over simplicity, and understanding we need both. So I just want it to speed up, not only for my own sake, but for your sake as well. Younger generations, my grandchildren. I think with all sorts of advances like AI and changes, we could be more bold strategically. And I think that's where you're very good, Pumza, is looking at it strategically and not saying we must have this, but saying actually there's a better way of winning. In my experience of men are quite obedient if you give them a win.
Wow, that is so powerful, Dr. Pauline. That is really powerful. And I think the most powerful thing we're doing today is actually bringing our daughters into the conversation and not bearing the scars alone, but they become also, they get to see, the conversations. Obi, one of the things that our mothers didn't do, that our mothers suffered in silence most of the time, and they cushioned us from all of what was happening. And when we grew up, we got a culture shock. When we got to understand marriage, we got to understand, corporates, we got to understand, and we're facing it for the first time. And I think the most commendable thing that Vuyo is doing is to bring you into this discussion, that where you're taking the baton from and how you're taking it forward. Mbooms, let's bring you in. I know you're struggling with the charger there, but where we're sitting, how do we take the baton forward and really looking at resolutions. I see we're over time, but it's been a very interesting conversation. How do we build now? Let's take and build forward. So with all the errors of the past, the errors of the current, how can we build better?
I hope she can hear us now, because she said she couldn't before.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think she's struggling with the network.
With connectivity.
Vuyo, how do we take this forward? And this is talking to Vuyo, she's in the boards. Dr. Pauline, she has been in like, big roles in corporates, and she's a wife, and she's balancing all of these roles, and sister, support system, and just the consistent friend who is really that loyalty that we're talking about. How do we build better for you?
As Dr. Pauline was also talking about these complexities, and how do you simplify this thing? How do you make it palatable? I also wanted to remind us actually that there is this kind of camaraderie and this kind of loyalty amongst women. It exists. I've lived in such a bubble, and I'll call it a bubble because it was such an isolated event, but it's there. And having experienced it, it is incredibly powerful and enabling. And we were warriors for one another. Where I had a group exec who was my self-appointed mentor, but she said, well, I'm going to do this for you. This is where you're going to be, and off you go. And I couldn't, in all sort of the right mind, not do that for my own team. I couldn't. I mean, I just couldn't. I wouldn't be a decent human being if I did. And it is beautiful to see when it works, because in that power, we were not deliberately seeking to emasculate men. There's no joy in that, but there was this collective strength in questioning and challenging and pushing back. Men don't like that very much, right? Because they created the system, so they set the temperature of the water in which everybody must swim. So when you are now busy struggling and trying to grapple that thing out of their hand, it's like, who are you? And because we're in the minority, never mind Black and woman, right? And now suddenly you're an executive as well. It's just like, what happened? Who died and made you? God's 2IC. So that collective strength is really, really powerful. But I've also been in an environment where my very own board chairman, who happened to be a woman, was the most toxic I've ever experienced, ever. And I thought, I was so excited that I was in this role and there were all these women, and it was just the worst experience, right? And in that toxicity, and for me, that's the loyalty, that brand of loyalty is loyalty to a toxic environment. Because for her, it was important to fit into the system. She could not associate with somebody who may well be a rebel, considered as such. And I don't mind, it's the nature of my roles, never been popular roles. But she couldn't take that. So there are these two extremes, but I also have seen it with young professional women who themselves, as Obi says, are girls. They look out for each other. The young professionals in ORCA, the African Women Chartered Accountants, they look after each other. That's why they're so powerful. And I think the more we amplify those systems that work, the more we can demonstrate to others that this is also not an entirely accurate or always true narrative, that we don't support each other. And of course, there are various brands of this loyalty, that in other instances, that you don't want to be part of an environment that perpetuates unkind rumors that Ubani slept her way to the top. And men find that this is okay, is a joke. I cannot sit in that room and find it funny. I won't do it. And I don't have to know that woman that they're talking about. But I often then provoke to say, well, do you know this for a fact? I mean, and the very notion that you're challenging and asking somebody to stand true to what they're saying is in itself a challenge. But the more we do that, the more often that we do that, the more we amplify and elevate those examples of women supporting each other and being loyal to one another in a healthy way, right? The more I think we can demonstrate that it's not a pipe dream. And supporting each other, because sometimes I think this toxicity in loyalty, at least misguided loyalty, comes from also the void within us, the inauthenticity, the lack of emotional intelligence, because we are so battered by the system that we believe it. We don't think that we can. We don't think we belong around the table. And so because we are broken, as it is said, those who are broken break others. And as if there's value in that, because the patriarchal system elevates those men who run this system. And so it's almost like our job to rescue one another from those instances, and knowing full well that it's not an easy job, but you've got to also know that you're not just there for yourself. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to join a board, I have a clear agenda of why I'm on that board. Mm. I'm not there to be by myself and be the first Black first this. I'm not interested in that. Mm. Have a very clear agenda that I want to make sure that our employment equity framework works, that there are creative ways of forging paths for young Black professionals. Mm-hmm. So if my agenda is clear like that, I'm almost certain that I will make decisions that are guided by that. Mm-hmm. But if I'm floating because it's important for me to be in a position, I just sit down. So our way of doing things has got to be different in that way. I think it must be important for us in our individual roles, in the corners that we're in, that here's a part of the bigger agenda that I choose for myself. Mm-hmm. And mine is going to be to lift as I rise, as it is cliched and typical to say. But if we're just floating and following the males because that's how it works, that's how I gain stature and position and all of those things, then of course it's going to just stay the same.
Wow. Wow. Powerful statements, Vuyo, in everything, every word, every sentence you've uttered, and really thought-provoking, knowing the purpose that you are there for. And knowing what you represent as you sit in that board chair, and that will also define what you are loyal to, as you sit Obi, you're voicing your comments about what can we do better, Obi, going into the future.
What can we do better? I think the way feminism has progressed is already such a healing progression, because the way that women have socialized each other from Makulu's age versus my stepmom's age versus my age, how I'm being socialized, it's already healing. Like women like 100 years ago weren't allowed to be in school, right? God forbid now that I not only go to school, I challenge the boys at school don't, when I say actually I'm speaking, they keep quiet. They don't say shut up to me. Like we've already entered a part where the cycle is healing. I just feel like there's a lot of nuance that we need to dissect and keep going at it. Like you were talking about mothers and really the complexity of women's roles in society. I was thinking of this, the book Little Women. Meg is such a sweet and important character, because there's this line that she says to Jo. Jo is meant to be this representation of women's ambition. She does not want to be married to a man. She believes like marriage is a is a death of freedom, which in those days it really was. And she goes to her sister on her wedding day and she's like, you will be bored of him in 2 years and we will be interesting forever, right? Don't marry him. And Meg says to her, just because my dreams are different does not mean they are not important. And that to me really struck me, because I think at some point I really became kind of harsh to like wives and like stay-at-home women. I'm like, why would you stay at home when you can be like a career woman? And like Meg's line really resonated with me, because the point of feminism was to give women choice again. It wasn't to make any role that a woman takes better than the other, because Meg wanting to be a wife and to be a mom was just as important and just as valid as Joe wanting to be independent of marriage, wanting to be a career woman and stuff like that. And I feel like with the way things are following, that I would have never reassessed that for myself, because I feel like third wave feminism came as this big cry for women. We need to get a grip, get out of the house, we need to get jobs, all of that, that you almost forgot that being a mom is actually a very important, if not the most important thing to be in society. You're the one who raises new generations of human beings, and being a mother is such actually a very one of the most difficult jobs in the world, I would say. It's such a sacrificing role. And when I think about my mom and I think about motherhood, I'm in this part of my adulthood where my mother has become this person to me where it's like, I'm trying, she is my mom at the end of the day, but I'm trying not to see her as my mom, but as like matatong. Like she was a woman before. She was also 21 years old. She was just a girl. Like as the women in the room here, you guys were all 21 before, right? You guys aren't just mang. You're just not someone's mom. Like you're Pumza, you're Dr. Crawford, right? You're Vuyo, right? You were all these amazing, intelligent, complex women before you became mothers. And I feel like as I start to just have conversations with older women, the more I start to take that in. And I feel like the key to progression is to keep having conversations, because lessons are found in wisdom and lessons are found in history.
Thank you so much, Obi. That is so profound. And I love that we've come back to understand that we are every woman, right? We are every woman. It's okay to be a mother. It's okay to aspire to be a married woman. It's okay to be a stay-at-home wife. It's okay to be, I think what the fight was, what the conditions of all of that we should not feel like we are handed a raw deal when that happens. So it's been a very interesting talk. And I think the profound wisdom, oh my God, I wish we can expand this, Dr. Pauline, because I want to see all other OBs. And because OB gets to see the reflection from, the different generations, how we saw things. And also we get to clarify certain things as well, where things were seen differently. They're kids, they interpret things their own way, and to reflect as women, like, hey, yeah, we were all once girls. Let's go back to 21 years. What was I thinking now, and what were the conditions around me? So I think maybe just to close off, it would be very important to reflect and say, on reflection, and this is a straight line, and I'm at this point of my life, and reflecting to what was before me, what I know now, and what I really am hoping for. I think because that would be powerful, because Obi gets to see herself in me. And she also gets a benefit of, wisdom of age. And one day when she's my age, and she probably thinks like me, she'll say, okay, this is what they meant. And it actually makes sense to her. And also then she starts on a better footing, because all generations had different challenges and we all had to deal with different dynamics. So I, Pumzatyan, reflecting at the stage that I'm at, which is 40 something for you. I stopped counting. I stopped counting. I see myself in Obi because my context was different then. I was estranged to my father. You know, I was angry at men. And I really felt that my mother was done a raw deal, you know, to be left with raising kids. And she had to take care of everything, you know, the life of this child, taking this child and building a future of this child. And there were good things about it because those things made me a fighter. They made me stand up, be independent, and know that I can do it myself. You know, I can provide for the life that I want myself for myself. And I think my life lived with, hey, I can do it better. Where I'm standing, Obi, and this is my wisdom to you at my 40-something age, I stand saying we need both sexes. And because societies that have been built to be strong have been built from a foundation of family, you know, a foundation of stability, and different parents bring different dynamics to the children. So I am a female, I'm a mom. My son needs a father as a father figure for him to for his foundation, for him to relate with society, with all the other things. So where I'm sitting at a point of saying we need harmony. We need to heal our wounds, because if I reflect back, was that really me as Pumza? Or was the wound speaking louder than anything? Because my background was this father who left. And therefore, I stood as a warrior, as a feminist, as everything else that said, hey, and make no mistake, I am happy. And I'm so proud of how my mother stood in those times, because it developed the leader that I am. It developed the person who is resourceful, who can fight, who can stand, who can lead, and be all those things. But in context, there is space for harmony, and there's space for both male and female, and us making it work. But you're right, loyalty is a two-way stream. It is not loyalty at all cost. And I think Vuyo mentioned aspects of it, that we do meet these toxic friendships and so on. I think once you define for yourself who you are and what loyalty means to you, it becomes easy to wean off certain things and say, I'll be loyal to that because it resonates with me, it resonates with my vision, it resonates with my values, and it makes life easy. I think because we had a bit of remnants with the Vuyos of that thing, that you have to be loyal to a cousin, you have to be loyal to everyone. We struggled with winning off some of these things that were not beneficial or advantageous to us. And I think if we pass on the baton to you, is we wish that you guys can carry, and I'm happy that you're at the stage where you're fighting. Do fight, but fight in context. Yeah, Vuyo, Mom, let me hand over to you.
Who are you passing it on to?
Vuyo, the mom.
Oh, to Vuyo, the mom. Okay, okay. You know, I think the struggles for us are real. They're every day. They're visible every day. So it's difficult to hide the complexities. I mean, I can be sitting here and I'm thinking, hey, supper, hey, grocery shopping, hey, have you gone to school? Are you okay? Oh gosh, I must go fetch. And that's like a whole hour of disruption that kind of kills your whole work momentum, because you are now, rightfully, seized with what is going to happen in this household on an operational level. But these are all the things that we have to grapple with. We grapple with them all the time. It probably gets a little easier. I mean, one life coach said to me, Vuyo, don't do anything by hand that can be done automatically by some machine. Yeah. So if it can be put into a washing machine or a dishwasher, or please choose that option, because that's the joy of the evolution of technology and all of these things that make our lives easier. Our battles are out there, our enemies out there. But to the extent that our responsibility is to ensure that you're home, because I choose to be both a mother and a corporate executive and all of those things. I want to explore all of those aspects of me, and they're not mutually exclusive. I want to show you guys that it is possible to be all of those things without compromising yourself and your values, but knowing that the battle is still very real, and that it is our joint responsibility, both as men and women. And of course, we also live in this world of transgender, of non-gendered, and that's a whole new world that we also have to live with and learn to adapt and understand, because maybe the battle is not just going to be between the two genders of male and female. So it just gets more complex for you. So good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wish you well. Mom, are you back?
Obi, what's your part? Yes, Bob.
Yes, shame. I'm struggling. I had to put in a little bit of power just for it to breathe. Bedroom is flat. So what are we saying now?
So
I didn't hear most of the.
What would your parting words, looking at now where you are, reflecting back on your life, what could you have done better? What could have worked better? Or what actually are the jewels of your background, where you're sitting and looking at the future as well?
I can actually say I have no regrets. Looking back at my life, I'm grateful for all those experiences, good and bad, because they never go to waste. They are worth keeping also, Obi. In your little wisdom of now, you need to be able to take some things from the old ones to add on to the new ones that you have. Because the ones that you have now are so new, they still need to be fed by a whole lot of experience. Because it's easy to say things, but there needs to be some doing of things to actually get yourself to that position that makes you feel, yes, you are a fighter, you are ready to face all these things, but you need to be able to learn a whole lot of other stuff to equip you to deal with all those things, because life is still going to be tough. Life is coming to you raw, but you need to have the tools to deal with that. The tools are varied. There are tools that will enable you to make your life easy, as you find it easy now because somebody else has made that possible that way. And as you get to Pumza's and Vuyo's era, you will be well equipped, actually, to fight the battles that they are now fighting, coupled with your youth, which is now fully backed up by all these little experiences I'm talking about, this inability to do things for yourself, to be self-sustainable. And le ira ye Vuyo, no, Pumza, is fine. One does not need to look to the future, you need to look to the now. Keep on adding these tools and skills, because you worked from those earlier ones and you knew what to discard from those. Because as you mature, you gain more wisdom and more tools to deal with the here and now more than the future, because nobody knows the future. What is important is the here and now. What are you able to do now to deal with these problems and challenges that we are facing now? The now is important. That's my parting shot.
Thank you very much, Mpums. All wisdom. Dr. Pauline?
This has been a wonderful conversation. I concur with, sorry, my dog's barking. I concur with all the things being said. And Obi, I think my advice is don't ever put yourself down and don't put anybody else down. If we all could live with that adage, that we don't put ourselves down and we don't put other people down, but we seek to understand another person's point of view, it's always going to be different to our own. And the truth is, we can never truly know another person's life. I had this with my granddaughter when she was 6. She said to me one night when I was trying to get her to read a book and she was angry with me, she said, "You don't know my life. You don't know what my life's about," at 6. And that's right. She said, "I don't know what your life's about either." And I thought that was such great wisdom. And now that my daughter is a mother at the same juncture that I was at her age with the same children, so she had her boy and girl the same age that I had her and her brother, I reflect on the fact that it's not my life, it's her life. And my life is my life. And she won't necessarily, we have a very good relationship, but she won't always understand my life as an entrepreneur and a visionary and somebody who appears to want to live in another country miles and miles away from her. And I realized last summer when I saw it, I don't need to live her story. So you don't need to live anybody else's story, just your own. But the more we share our stories, the more we can gather how the pieces fit together. And I do think there's a new dawn coming, and I totally agree with living in the moment, because things are changing so fast. You have to be in the moment to understand what's coming so fast. And I really honor what you shared with us today. And I agree, Fumza, we need to get younger people into our wisdom circles and listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pauline. So much wisdom. Obi, how was this experience for you with all these old women around you?
I love women. I love hearing from women. I love speaking to women. So I had a really good time talking to you guys. And I just thank you for letting me feel heard and stuff like that. I had a really good time. I had fun with you guys.
And it was so wonderful to hear you out and to listen to your perspective. We really appreciate hearing your voice and keep raising your voice. You are here for that reason, right? And you stand for something that is good. We are living in a dangerous world, so that message needs to be heard. Ladies, it was more fun than I had anticipated. And I just love the conversation and the recording. Dr. Pauline, it was the first time that you hear the African perspective. You can agree, yes, we have solid leaders and wise women in Africa. And the future leaders that we are also nurturing. You could see through Obi, the assertiveness, and the world is our oyster, eh? The world is just waiting for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Tumpums and family, Vuyo and Obi, thank you so much, guys. You made this really worthwhile.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely to meet you, Dr. Pauline.
Thank you, Dr.
Thanks,
Pauline.
guys. Bye-bye. It's way past dinner,
Pity
but
that
hey,
I can't see you now.
Bye.
Sorry that I can't see everyone.
No problem, Booms. We can hear you.